Riley Leonard takes a knee. It's one of the biggest wins in Duke football history. Down goes Clemson. The Devils win it 28-7.
We're going to have some fun tonight in Durham, Mr. Pash.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Devil Blitz. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, here once again with my co-host, Caleb Dudley. Caleb, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, man. Good to be back.
Good. Yeah. It's good to be back. We're also joined by Dom Fenoglio once again. Dom, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Good. So today, we're recording after two of Duke's first ACC games against North Carolina and Georgia Tech. Dom and I covered the North Carolina game where Duke won 21-20 in a super exciting game. We'll dig into that a little bit. And then also talk about the Georgia Tech game. Caleb and I were in Atlanta for that. Duke lost 24-14 for its first loss of this season and is now in a bye week. So Duke has the week off, but will take on Florida State next Friday. So that should be a really fun game. Parents weekend. It should be a good environment. So we'll talk about all that. We'll talk a little bit about the ACC. And yeah, so I'll start off with the UNC game. That was, it feels like such a long time ago, but 2 short weeks ago, or less than 2 weeks ago. Obviously the big storyline from that was Duke falling down 17-0, even 20-0 in the second half, and then just coming back, storming back against the Tar Heels and winning, and for the first time since 2018. Dom, what were your thoughts from covering that game? Why do you think that comeback happened? Just some overall takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. The first half was not pretty, and they were able to turn around in the second half. I think that's a lot to be said about the coaching staff. I know, Ranjan, you wrote about the mental strength of the team and the coaching staff, and you can't overlook the physical strength. I'm a big fan of David Feely, and I think, the fact that the offensive line and the defensive line just controlled the second half, controlled the fourth quarter, is a testament to their physical strength. But also at the same time, it's just it's performance from the players themselves, right? Star Thomas had a great game. I just mentioned the offensive line, the way they were blocking, the way Nicky Dalmolin was blocking in the second half. Nicky Dalmolin, might not jump off the stat sheet in terms of catches and yards and things like that, but he's really done a fantastic job. In the run blocking game, I really think since he's a big reason the rushing attack has improved since those first few weeks of the season, as well as Star Thomas. And, I really think Malik Murphy settled down in the second half and just really simplified things. I think this offense is at its best when it's simple. Those RPO reads on the slants, screen passes to Jordan Moore, to Eli Pankel, not trying to take those deep downfield shots every time because they'll get open. If you get Jordan Moore in one-on-one coverage in the fourth quarter, take that shot downfield. But you don't need to be doing that 3-4 times a drive. And, not getting into the Georgia Tech game at all, but even in the first half of the UNC game, I did feel like we'd get a 4-yard rush on first down and then throw the ball 20 yards downfield 2 plays in a row. And it's really hard to get your offense in a rhythm when you're just searching for that home run. I think Diaz said in the press conference afterwards, that's exactly what UNC was trying to get Duke to do. And all they needed to do was hit singles, and so Star Thomas started, getting 5-6 yards of carry. They kept going back to him, kept going with that short, body blows, and eventually UNC caved in.
Yeah, it's a lot there. We'll talk about the offensive struggles, but I will second what you said about Nicky because Diaz actually emphasized that. When I asked him about the offensive line, he was like, you got to mention the tight ends too, and Star played a great factor in that. Caleb, just from your perspective as well, what were your kind of takeaways from the UNC game personally?
Yeah, not really much else besides what's already been said, but I just thought they did a really good job in the second half, containing him around Hampton. Obviously, I think he had like 80 yards in the first quarter or something. I think he's the best running back in the ACC, one of the best in the country. I said that last pod when we talked to the UNC people. But the second half, he really didn't get much going. And so I thought, it was very impressive for Duke to, after kind of getting run over in the first half, to really flip the switch after halftime and knock him down.
Yeah, I was also impressed. I mean, Criswell was doing a good job kind of rolling out and picking apart the defense, and Hampton was almost best used as a decoy in the first half a couple times because the play action was so effective after he was able to get those yards, and the speed of the defense really closed in, limited screens. The spies on Criswell did great, and you're right, like you said, I mentioned the mental aspect, but we all saw Diaz's halftime speech kind of afterwards when that went out. I was definitely curious what he said, and that kind of fired me up and confirmed what I thought about how he coaches, how the coordinators adjust, and that was very prominent and seen in the second half as well. And those second half comebacks have been a theme of Duke's season and carried on to the Georgia Tech game. So we'll transition into that. But the comeback attempt did fall short. Duke was down 10-0, but did lead 14-10 at the start of the fourth quarter, but gave up 2 fourth quarter touchdowns. And Caleb, I know you wrote about how this fourth quarter was unlike the previous fourth quarters for Duke. Looked like they kind of ran out of gas a little bit, but we were there down in Atlanta. What were your takeaways from that fourth quarter and maybe the performance as a whole?
Yeah, I mean the main thing, just same kind of deal. They started out just slow again. 3 and out in the first drive. Georgia Tech scores on their first drive. It's kind of become a theme at this point, and even like Middle Tennessee State scored in their first drive. And so it's just kind of become a theme, and ACC play that really doesn't fly. No matter how good of a team you are, like you just don't want to get in a hole like that. And the fourth quarter, like you said, I know Coach Diaz said after the game that really there's like a lot of guys just were playing too many snaps. And with the injuries the team's had and just the overall maybe lack of depth, with people transferring in the offseason and a lot of young guys. Guys just were tired and had to come out of the game, like Cameron Bergeron and Terry Moore were MIA in the second half. He said Trey Freeman played like 80 snaps or something, had no backup, just had to play every single snap without a choice.
Oof.
And so I think, just for them, even having that fourth quarter mindset like you wrote about after the UNC game just can't overcome your body sometimes, and that's just kind of what happened to him on Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at that, I think the bye week comes at a perfect time. Duke played 6 games in a row. That's obviously physically taxing, but I also think it's a really big reality check moment for the team. They really have to look inwards, almost like they did at the halftime of the UNC game, and say, I think from a defensive perspective, let's say, we're doing good in the third and the fourth quarter in most games. Maybe we got tired in that Georgia Tech game, but even still, we need to be able to set that tone and really be disruptive. And I think if this team is going to be successful in the second half of the season, as successful as it's been in the first half, it's going to come down to the defense. I think offensively, there's a lot more questions, frankly, in my opinion, a lot more problems. I'm worried about the way the offense has started games. I don't think I don't think Duke has executed early game drives ever. Maybe in the Elon game, they were successful in the first quarter. I can't even remember.
Yeah, I mean, actually, early in the season, like the first quarter and coming out of the second half, the first drive of that, we're usually pretty good for the early couple of games. But anyway.
I guess. I still I remember that Elon game. I think the first drive was a field goal, right?
Yeah, maybe.
My problem, I think, with the early game offense, I think I said it in the UNC game, and maybe you guys will disagree, is I feel like, defenses at this point understand that Malik Murphy wants to throw the ball down the field and that Duke wants to throw the ball down the field. And it almost feels like they're baiting him into taking those deep shots. And he's falling for it every game early. And then, Jonathan Brewer, Diaz, they talk some sense into him and say, okay, let's change our approach. But it always seems like the offense is reacting instead of, catching the defense on its heels. And that's kind of where I don't know, my problems with the offense come from.
Well, yeah, I think I totally agree. And I think early in the season when they were having successful drives, it started off with screens to Quayshawn Brown, little curls to Jordan Moore, or even slants to Jordan Moore. And they were short passes. And I mean, the offensive starts, Malik Murphy was 1 for 4 for 2 yards in the first quarter. I say the first time you get him out there, throw a screen, an easy completion, or even like
big screen pass guy, huh?
Well, I mean, you will get the same production that you did for the whole first quarter in one play if you can get him. I mean, he against North Carolina, I think he missed his first 5 or 6 passes, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, it's hard on a quarterback mentally. Like I'm even impressed that Malik was able to bounce back from that because you can really miss a lot of your throws when you're not able to get any completions. And I think they should adjust to that. And also, like the tempo offense works best when you can have multiple plays in succession, when you can have multiple plays in a drive. And it's weird because you saw Duke go tempo earlier in the season, and sometimes they do it this season, but it's just not as effective when you're not able to get, I don't know, 5 yards per play, 5 or 6 yards per play, and you're only doing either, 0 or home run balls.
Well, and for me, the biggest killer to those tempo drives is an incompletion.
Right.
Like they throw a deep ball to Jordan Moore down the sideline and it's incomplete, and all of a sudden Jordan Moore can't sprint back and get back on the line in 3 seconds to run another play. He's tired because he just ran 40 yards downfield, so he has to come off. The defense gets a chance to sub, and it, for lack of a better word, can be a drive killer sometimes.
Yeah. Caleb, what are your thoughts on the offense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Jordan Moore had 2 catches this week. Star Thomas couldn't get any yards. I don't know. Definitely not like the high flying offense that we were promised in the offseason. I don't know if that's the quarterback's fault or Jonathan Brewer's fault, or maybe they just don't have the guys they need to succeed in the ACC. But I guess we'll see after the bye week.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, a lot of these quarterbacks that are able to succeed have some sort of, ability to run, get out of the pocket a little bit. And I'm not even saying I think Malik can be fine, totally good being a pocket passer, because I think his arm talent is great, strength is there. But maybe even changing it up a little bit, like a one drive Henry Beelan thing, like they did against Northwestern, or just throwing some different looks out there at teams, so it's not just. So it can be improv a little bit and not just, stick to what the play said, because if you get a blitz, Henry Beelan can maybe roll out and get out of it and throw to somebody short or run for a first down, or even on those like 3rd and shorts. Me and Caleb were talking about in the Georgia Tech game, there were a couple 4th and shorts that Duke didn't convert on. One they converted on but got a penalty taken back. The second one was like a mishandled snap, but I mean, Malik's 6'5", huge guy. He theoretically, could get easily a 4th and 1, or Henry Beelan could too. So that has hurt the offense because 3rd and 4th down conversions have been poor.
I think, like you just said, I think you could see a big difference in the way that Georgia Tech played and the way that Duke played. When Georgia Tech had a 4th and 1, they'd give it to Jamal Haynes, or they'd bring in Zach Pyron under center and let him give you sneak. Duke refuses to get under center. We're not going under center. Has not gone under center one play all season long. And instead had a 4th and 1 where their running back tripped over their quarterback and they fell short and lost the game. So, so I think there's definitely some things that need to be talked about, and definitely some things that haven't worked. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and going back to what did work for Georgia Tech against Duke, their offense, gosh, I can count on one hand the number of downfield passes through. It was all screen passes, rollouts from the quarterback, runs to the outside, runs to the inside, screens, little slants, like all this creative stuff to kind of chip their way downfield. It never feels like they got big chunk plays. They got 4 or 5 yards of play. Yeah. And I think, it seemed to me, talking to Jonathan Brewer in the preseason and leading up to the year, that was kind of his idea for what the offense should function like, is something that's moving fast, chipping its way down the field to open up those big shots, and I think that it's kudos to the Duke secondary that Haynes King didn't take very many of those shots. But I think I think Malik is the quarterback, I don't think a quarterback change is necessarily the right approach.
Right.
But I do think you need to get way more high percentage looks in terms of completions. Like, get the ball in Jordan Moore's hand because he's your best player. Get the ball in Quayshawn Brown's hand and he can make a play, because like you said, like if Malik Murphy doesn't have the legs to run, which isn't a problem, you do need someone to get those legs moving.
No, yeah, totally agree. And I think Georgia Tech's a perfect comparison because I think Duke has the playmakers to have an offense. I mean, similar to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's playmakers are great. But you mentioned Quayshawn Brown. I mean, when Jacquez Moore theoretically will come back for the Florida State game, Star Thomas, obviously Jordan Moore is more of an outside receiver, but can still catch screens. And yeah, Pankel and Javon Harvey as well. Anyway, but yeah, those will all be important focuses, and we'll see what Duke does. We'll contextualize this in the big picture. Duke is 5-1 after 6 games, and has won a few that maybe it needed some luck to do, but has found ways to win in big time environments. So Duke will take its 5-1 record to take on Florida State. We'll preview that in a second. But now let's talk about the ACC because it's been a crazy first couple of weeks of conference play. There's been some exciting games. College Game Day went to Cal last week, and but Cam Ward did his thing in the fourth quarter there and came back. Should we do our stock up, stock down? Dom, you want to participate?
Sure.
Okay. Caleb, I'll start with you. Who is your stock up, stock down in the ACC?
I will go stock up SMU.
Yeah.
After looking really, really bad to start the season, they all of a sudden have like the third best chance to make the ACC championship, which they have all year. So maybe ESPN knew the whole time that they were going to be good. But they beat Louisville on the road this week. Kevin Jennings is like really good at quarterback. Maybe I don't know. SMU, that's really surprised me.
Yeah.
And then stock down NC State. Grayson McCall is probably done playing football after this
hope
week.
he's okay. Yeah.
They lost to Wake Forest, who is not good. I don't think in the slightest. They're 0-2 in the ACC, right there with Carolina. And I like CJ Bailey. I think he's solid, but definitely not the year that NC State fans were hoping for, and were kind of promised by Dave Dorn.
Yeah, I'll go with two teams from the same game last week. For stock up, I'll go with Virginia. I think Virginia's looked really strong to start the season. They're 2-0 in the ACC, 4-1 overall. They just beat Boston College, who I guess I'll get to in a second. But, I think Virginia's looked great. Anthony Calandria is, in my opinion, a good quarterback on his way to becoming an even better quarterback. And Virginia's looking pretty good. But they did beat Boston College, and Boston College has somewhat returned to earth after beating Florida State in Tallahassee. And, I think that the Eagles are not flying so high these days. And looking at their schedule coming up, it's not really necessarily going to get much easier for them. They're going on the road to Virginia Tech. They got SMU on the schedule. They have Pittsburgh, who's another potential stock-up team, left on the schedule. Louisville left on the schedule. So I think I hate to say it, but I think their best ball might be behind them at this point in the season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Thomas Castellanos, because I know he was hurt 2 weeks ago, but he did have some turnover problems, and we'll see. But I will second what you said about Virginia, because it's good to see that offense come together. I thought they would be better this year, and I was most impressed with the defense against Boston College. Picking off Castellanos twice, that was really impressive, and they just have a brutal schedule ahead. So good that Virginia got them.
Virginia does?
Yeah, Virginia has 4 ranked teams on the schedule remaining, and including Louisville excluding Louisville and at Virginia Tech. So it is pretty brutal, but we'll see what Tony Elliott and company can do. For me, I'm gonna go. Let's see here. I'll stock up Pitt, because we haven't talked about Pittsburgh yet. I think Caleb talked about them a couple weeks ago, and Pitt, I'm not convinced that their defense is good enough to hold up against some of these teams down the stretch. So that'll be interesting to see going forward. But Eli Holstein, the Alabama transfer, has been absolutely incredible, using both his arms and his legs. He's willed his team to victory, and they've kind of had a Duke-ish sense in that they've had some great quarter comebacks.
Who's that running back for Pitt? He's really good.
Well, which one?
He
had one, and now
he's like the pass catcher.
Ronnie Hammond's back.
Yeah,
he
was torching.
Is that
him. He was torching North Carolina last week.
Yeah. And so we'll see. I don't actually know. Let's see what their schedule has. I know they
have Clemson and Virginia.
They have Clemson,
Virginia, Louisville.
Yeah,
not great.
We'll see. This ACC finish should be interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. But stock down. I'm gonna go with Florida State once again. I feel bad doing this, but benched DJ. Well, not benched. He got hand surgery, and it seems like he's out for the season. And Brock Glenn came in against Clemson. I will actually say, I watched that game. Brock Glenn made some really good throws that I did not see coming from him or that team. And so I think Florida State can maybe use that as some confidence boost, going forward. But since the last time we recorded, they lost to SMU by more than 30, or what is that, 26, and fell to Clemson in a game that was a lot more lopsided than the score entailed. Kudos on the Seminoles' red zone defense, but Clemson put up 500 yards of offense. And so they have, like we mentioned, Duke coming, they're traveling to Durham, so we'll see what they can do. But 1-5 start with not a lot of gimme games going forward for them might be tough. That actually segues nicely into what we're going to talk about, which is the Duke Florida State game. So, like I mentioned, a kind of Friday night game, the third Friday night game of the year for Duke.
Yes, third and final.
Third and final. Parents' weekend.
That's what you think.
It'll put us on some Friday bowl game.
Anyway, so Duke has that bye week, like I mentioned. Florida State also has a bye week, so both teams will come in well rested, reset mode. Caleb, what do you think Duke needs to do to beat Florida State and get back on the winning trail?
Well, 500 yards offense would be cool, like Clemson did. I don't think that's very attainable with how Duke's looking on offense. Okay. I would say with Florida State, the main thing for them is, Toafili's kind of their guy. Brock Glenn or DJU have not really been, anything spectacular. So Clemson held them 22 yards rushing total as a team. I don't think Duke will do that. They can't really stop the run at all, except second half over Marion Hampton. And so I think for Duke, they're going to have to hold Toafili like under 100 yards would be nice. They've been able to get pressure and get tackled for loss. I think they can definitely put some pressure on Glenn, but they're going to have to at least establish a rhythm early because Florida State's defense is very talented. Probably the best defense that Duke's seen all year, I would assume, in terms of talent at least.
Yeah.
And so
Certainly.
I think for them, just going to have to kind of just handle business early on, and then special teams wise, Todd Polinos I think's missed 2 field goals in a row maybe.
Kate Reynoldsson, great, arguably the best freshman punter in the nation.
Yeah, he's Malik Murphy's best friend nowadays, and so I think it'll be important for Duke just to kind of set a rhythm early on.
Yeah, I think one thing that we didn't mention about the Georgia Tech game that I think was also a huge factor was time of possession.
Yes, good point.
The defense, not only was it tired because it was the 6th straight week of playing and there's been injuries, they were tired because they never got off the field. So I think time of possession will be big. In specific, I'm hoping that Jaquez Moore is back for Duke because, he's tried to come back a few times and just, hasn't been able to get over that hump. So hoping for his health to be better for that game. And I was in Tallahassee last year for that Florida State game, and he ripped off that big run. So, yeah, something like that would certainly breathe some life back in the Blue Devils. But I do think establishing the run, stopping the run on Florida State, and establishing the run, and we've talked about screen passes and short passes, which in some ways are an extension of the run game. So I think trying to do as much of that as you can to make time of possession a little more even will be the most important thing.
Yeah, totally agree. I think this is predicated on the offense. I think Florida State will score, roughly like 17, 14, 17, maybe can get in their low 20s, but from like that 17 to 24 range. But if the offense can outscore that, Duke can win. Brock Glenn, I mentioned the good throws. Those were kind of not under too much pressure, but if Duke can get in his face, he can make him uncomfortable and his chemistry down. I think Dom, you made a great point about the time of possession because 3 and outs have just been such an issue for Duke offensively. And that starts with the screen game, running game, and establishing that. I also think Malik Murphy needs to hit on one of the deep shots. It's been a while since it's been like they've been close throws and they've been miraculous catches from Jordan Moore, but I think at the beginning of the season you saw those like strides for touchdowns, deep shots where somebody would, catch it and run it in. And those are a big confidence boost. The one against Georgia Tech was not a deep throw itself, but when Samir Hagans had that 65-yard touchdown catch, that was big for him as well. So just his confidence to get up, and then I would like to see Duke mix it up offensively a little bit. But yeah, any other things for Florida State or for Duke specifically that you guys have? All right. Well, again, we will talk after the Florida State game. We'll recap that and then look forward a bit. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know on this bye week, we still have a lot of great coverage up on the Chronicle website. We have a midseason check-in, which is essentially what we talked about here, but in written form. And then also coverage from all of Duke's other sports that are going on this fall. We also have our basketball player previews up on the website, along with some countdown to craziness takeaways. It's wild basketball season starting in a couple weeks officially, so definitely check all that stuff out. And lastly, this podcast, again, is brought to you by Duke Stores. Make sure to support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise in the world that comes to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all your Duke merch. If you're a Duke student, I hope you have a fantastic fall break and definitely get recharged and ready for the second half of the semester. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been the Blue Devil Blitz.